Hi, hey, Dr. Martinez, and anybody else who decides to watch this on the World Wide Web. But my name is Alex Walters, and I am in the Multicultural Diversity class. And for my project, I decided to do a TED Talk over a multicultural topic, and the topic I chose was diversity in agriculture. And I chose this topic because I'm ag ed, and I think that if we want to talk about multicultural things, this is probably has the most relevance to me and my classroom. But one of the things that I think about, like especially with diversity in agriculture, is that of all of the industries that make up this whole economy that we have, agriculture probably is the most dependent on diversity and on minorities for the workforce. And if you walk through almost any large-scale farming or agricultural operation, you're going to see people from all sorts of walks of life and so many different cultures that are represented. And so I think it's a really important topic to talk about, and one that people in the industry probably disregard, because in a lot of aspects it's just something that we already deal with and something that we're already sort of aware of. But I think that always continuing that education piece and trying to be more cognizant and more deliberate in recruiting those minorities and wanting more diversity in agriculture, I think is really important. So I think that this is a great topic, not only for this project but for my future classroom. So one of my first points is that there's a growing minority population in rural America right now, and right now actually 19% of the population in non-metro areas is minority populations. And so obviously in Kansas, especially being mostly a rural area to the country standards and the world standards, that there are a lot of diversity and a lot of minorities represented in our rural areas all across the state. And so a couple of statistics that I found: 75% of crop workers were of the Hispanic population in 2006. And so obviously that ranges in a lot of different roles and responsibilities, but obviously that is a pretty staggering number for so much of our workforce to be represented as Hispanic and other minorities. And obviously tying it back into Kansas and how that fits into us in Southwest Kansas, that's a huge thing because of all the meat processing that's out there, and like meat processing and like actual processing of animals, all the way to the production of those animals in feed yards and different things. There's so much diversity out in the feed yards. You could drive by, like you go down any highway, you go down Highway 83 out there, and there's feedlots everywhere. And a lot of those, there's a lot of Mexican cowboys out there, and those guys love what they do, and I think they do a really good job. And so that 19% of people being out there representing that non-metro population, that's obviously huge, and a lot of those people are employed by the agriculture industry. Another one of my points that I wanted to talk about was how we support minorities in agriculture. I think that's something we don't really talk about because I definitely think that it could be easy to, because one thing we've talked about in class is that not everybody is obviously the same, not everybody has different cultures, and so I think that supporting those minorities in their pursuit of agricultural, the industry, or whatever they decide to do, I think that that's huge and something that we don't really think about. But one thing that we have in the College of Ag at K-State is MANNERS, which is it stands for Minorities in Agriculture, Natural Resources, and Related Sciences. And it's a club that meets, I think on Wednesday nights maybe, but they come from all sorts of walks of life, and there's so many different cultures that are represented, and they kind of all get to be there for each other and like share their struggles and what they're doing, and just try to, again, like, just be there for each other, and trying to find solutions for some of the issues that they're probably facing. And I think that they've been a huge tool to, especially in recent light of what's been happening on K-State campuses. The College of Ag actually tonight just had a diversity in ag presentation talk, or whatever you want to call it, but I wasn't able to go, unfortunately, because I was in class. But I think that manners was a huge part in participating and putting that on. And another thing that I am actually really interested in is urban farming. So a few weeks ago, we got to go to National FFA Convention in Indianapolis, and I got to go with my cooperating school, which is Haven High School, and on our way out there, we stopped in Kansas City at an urban farm. I didn't really know what that was going to mean or what to expect from that, but they're actually helping refugees that are coming from all sorts of different countries that are in, like, civil war and are facing a lot of unrest, and they come here. And I didn't realize that Kansas had so much of a refugee population, but Kansas City seems like a really common landing spot for them. I'm guessing it's because it's in the middle of nowhere. But that urban farming, they were talking about how it's like a program, like a year or two long program, and they have like a small plot of land. It's really small, like it would look like a garden to you or I, but to them it's like huge. And so they get to choose what they want to grow. They get to plant it and harvest it and care for it all themselves, and then they get to go to the local farmers markets and actually sell it, and they get the profits. And I think that was so cool because it's specifically for minorities in the urban area that are more specifically, just not minorities in general, but are more specifically refugees from those countries. So I think that was something that's really neat, that they're equipping those farmers with the skills and the tools to go out and be successful and to earn some income. Because one thing they were talking about is you come here and it's super scary because you're living in a place where you don't know anyone and you don't speak the language. And so farming and agriculture is one of those things that's pretty universal. And so that was a huge support that I saw. And that's a lot of ways for them to build those relationships, as well as earn income and hopefully propel them into a career. So that's another big support piece that I saw. And then the third main point that I want to talk about was tradition. Tradition in agriculture is a big stigma that I think that gets in the way of diversity and minorities in ag, because we've talked about the coffee shop in Hugoton, Kansas is probably going to be pretty ruthless to that Hispanic culture that's out there, or other cultures that are represented. And so, the traditional view of agriculture, minorities isn't just, I don't think it's just culture. I think it's also women, obviously other races or religions, and different things. I mean, all of those things that we've talked about, the queer community, those are things that sometimes aren't necessarily accepted by the ag industry. But I think that this next generation we've talked a lot about, the millennial generation, is really progressive. And so I think that some of that traditional agriculture will be kind of pushed out and will continue to be more open and more understanding of anybody that wants to be involved in our industry. Because why would we want to turn anybody away from trying to feed the world? Because we need the help. So we might as well just be open and accepting to everybody that wants to do that. So just kind of to encompass everything that I talked about, because I talked a lot. But I think that through this class I looked through a different lens of diversity, because I grew up in a tiny town in northwest Kansas, and so even like crossing into southwest Kansas, those are very different parts of the state in themselves. And I also had an internship in Scott City this past summer, working for the extension office out there. So out there, I was really able to interact with and really further understand what what those minorities and what diversity really means in agriculture, because I hadn't seen that as much until I was out there and I got to actually be part of like a cattlemen's college where we had all the Mexican cowboys from all the feedlots coming, and we taught them how to identify sick calves, and like that's something that they need to know, and that they probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise. But and I think that as we continue to progress as an industry, we'll continue to see growth in this diversity piece. And I think that we're headed in the right direction. And like I said at the beginning, I think of any industry, we're probably already there in diversity, like as far as across the board, there's so much. But again, that tradition piece and like becoming more accepting, I think that that will be a big stepping stone. So, to leave you, I have a couple of statistics and a couple of sources. One of these comes from the Department of Ag. So, going into how we're continuing to be diverse in the industry. So, compared to 2007 to 2012, minorities such as Hispanic, Asian, American Indian, and African American agriculturalists, they're on the rise. And so, Hispanic rose from they rose the most of all the minorities represented, and they rose from 55,570 to 67,000 owners and operators of farms. So I thought that was a pretty cool statistic to see that growth. And then another one was from the Progressive Farmer website, and this one was interesting. So this past year, Purdue University did a study that there were over 50,000 jobs in America that are related to agriculture, and colleges only fill about 60% of those needs. So me and the rest of the K-State College of Ag class and all of these across America, we're only going to be able to meet the need of 60% of that workforce. And so I think that a lot of that gap is filled by minority populations, maybe some of those unskilled workers that you might think of that we need at feedlots and in the processing plants. So just seeing that, again, that diversity and that gap that has to be met by people that don't have a 4-year degree. So with that, I think that this is like I said, an important topic that we need to discuss more and continue discussing, but I think overall we're on the right path. So thank you.